night long.
What's good, everybody? Making the Walk Podcast, episode 12. Doing this one solo dolo today, but we got a few things to get into, so we're going to talk about them. Before we jump into it, of course, like, subscribe, share, tell everybody about the podcast, and comment. And also make sure that you follow us on the socials, on Instagram and on Twitter. We have a lot of conversations on there, and a lot of discussions, a lot of disagreements, but healthy disagreements there. So definitely join us there. But today we're going to talk about UFC Vegas, Holm versus Bueno Silva, aka the card that no one wanted. And we're going to also dig into UFC London, as well as any current events that have popped up on our radar. So without further ado, we'll jump into UFC Vegas. So like I said, the card that no one wanted. I mean, a lot of people, and the reason I say that no one wanted it is it comes from just what we've heard on social media, what people have been saying or people have not been saying, or the fighters that were on the card being less heralded. I think the first 8 fights were among fighters that were coming off losses, which doesn't ingratiate people to the audience, so to speak. There's other ways of doing this card, but the thing is when you get cards that are super stacked, cards that are following or preceding it are always going to suffer. It's just kind of the way that things go. But what we did get from the card were some interesting storylines, topped by what Mayra Bueno Silva was able to do to Holm. She submitted her, I think it was in the second round, and with a ninja choke, which was pretty dope. And I think that she was even surprised herself at the submission. And her reaction was pretty priceless. And Holm just kind of trotted off and was like, well, I guess we'll just get ready for the next one. But that win for Bueno Silva put her firmly in title contention. After the rankings were released, they moved her up to number 3. And I think Holly moved down to number 5 or 6 or somewhere in that range. So it actually spiced things up a little bit. So we got Bueno Silva at 3. We got Pennington at 1, and we got Rocky at 2. So here's the thing. Rocky or Raquel Pennington has done her work. She's coming off a few wins and deserves to be in the conversation. Juliana Pena is a former champion. No matter how short that reign was, she is a former champion. So she obviously deserves to be in the conversation. She beat the former champion, Amanda Nunes. So she's in the conversation. So it's out of those 3. And I think that the matchmakers have an interesting conundrum ahead of them. Do they go ahead and put Rocky in there? Because Juliana's going to be in it. So do they put Rocky in there? Or do they put Bueno Silva in there? I think it could fix itself because, Rocky sometimes has some nagging injuries, and she might want to take the time and just say, look, just put me up against the winner. Or it could be the other way around. Either way it goes, it looks like it's out of those 3 to get the belt. And Juliana is the one constant there because I suppose she's the biggest draw, I guess you could say, loosely. Even though she's a little cringe, a little off-putting to some of the people who follow the sport. But it's got to be somebody. Somebody has to get the belt. And now that Holly has excused herself from the conversation, it's out of those 3. But Bueno Silva, with that being a finisher, out of those 3, she is the finisher. Carrying on the legacy of being from Brazil, from Amanda Nunes. I think that coming off of that, finishing a former champion, she's really made it hard to not choose her over Rocky in that particular situation. But we'll see how it goes. A lot of different moving parts, but if I were to choose, I probably would go ahead and just make it Juliana against Rocky, to go ahead and clear that out. Make that definitive, and then have Silva fight the winner of that. Just make it easy. So the next fight, the co-main on the bill, was Jack Della Maddalena against Basel Hafez, and this is him stepping in. Obviously, this was from the previous fight, or from the previous card. It fell out because of Sean Brady's injury, and Jack definitely wanted to get a fight in, and so Basel stepped up and took the fight, and he took the fight to him in the fight. A lot of takedowns, a lot of control, but on the feet, it was Jack's show. He was definitely piecing them up. But the one thing that I would say about Hafez is he has a motor that won't allow him to quit on himself. He made this into that split decision that it was. Jack walked away with that decision, but in my opinion, Hafez didn't lose any credibility for stepping in short notice and pushing JDM to try to grab this decision, which he did. For Jack Della Maddalena, interesting enough, this fight actually made him move up in the rankings, which I thought was a little odd. I mean, it wasn't a massive move up, but he moved from 15 to 14, which I thought that was interesting. But regardless, him taking the fight on short notice, people make the assumption that if a fighter is ranked, that they should be able to beat anybody that's unranked, and even if it's short notice. And styles make fights, and without having the proper amount of time to study an opponent, you're taking away a valuable angle that fighter might have. And so I think that JDM still walking away with this decision win is still a good mark on his resume to help him move up. And he learned a lot about himself in that particular fight. So props to JDM for walking away with that victory, and I'm anxious to see who he gets matched up with next to continue to move up in the division. Oh, it was Ian Machado that they flip-flop spots. So Ian Machado's tattoo is now accurate because it says 15. So all is right in the world on that one. So Prado against Azatar. Prado's a young one. He's 21, I believe, and he has the makings of a future star written all over him. He was looking for the finish, and he's got some surprising power, some surprising pop, and some really good composure for somebody that age. He has a pretty good amount of fights too for a 21-year-old. So that lends in the area of experience. I think that by the time he's 25, if he stays in the UFC, he's going to be a major problem. Obviously weren't able to see the other parts of his game, but if he's rounding those out like he's doing his striking, dude's going to be a major problem. Jung Ho Park beat Albert Duraev, and the dance at the end, the celebration at the end was super player. He had the old man dance, and he hit it. But the Iron Turtle, I mean, the way that he used his jab to set up everything else, and he was patient. Just like, the tortoise and the hare. He just took his time and waited for the opening, and then he just put it on him. It was a brilliant fight, a brilliant strategy that him and his team put together to get that win. And I really want to see him fight somebody at the bottom of the top 15, just to test him, just to see where he's at. That strategy may not work on them, but I mean, we don't know until we see. I'd definitely like to see him move up and start facing those type of fighters, those level of fighters. Um, the next the next one that I wanted to briefly touch on was Norma Dumont. She beat Chelsea Chandler, and the infamous meme that's going around all the social media with Chandler running away. Norma, I mean, at no point did I have any doubt that Norma would win this fight. Chelsea is a big featherweight, and I know that she fights it. I think she's ranked at 135, but she's just a massive individual. And she came in with that Stockton feel to her that, like she looked at Nick and Nate and was like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what you guys do. And, that started before the fight, her riling Norma up in the backstage after the weigh-ins, and that continued into the fight. And Norma, once she started hitting her, Chelsea immediately had somewhere to be. I think she had an appointment. She was looking for a door, and she couldn't find one and ran into the side of the cage, and Norma continued to put it on her. But Norma's call out at the end was really to the UFC to make a 145 belt. Here's the thing on that. If Norma was finishing fights, if she was like flatlining girls, then I think the argument is there. You could have that conversation, because there are, even though we don't have a rankings, there are plenty of females that would fight in that 145 division that's been shown, throughout this time period, even though they haven't really pushed it. And even outside the organization, there's fighters who would fight in that division. But I feel like Norma's fight style right now is more cautious. And because she's not finishing fights, she's not putting pressure on the UFC to make that division. When the UFC made that division for Cyborg was knocking folks out. She was the scariest female on the roster. And she forced their hand into making, her a belt that was attainable, because she couldn't get down to 135. Norma has to follow that model to make that undeniable for the UFC to do it. Otherwise, they're going to try to force her to go down to 135. Or, next stop is trying to fight Kayla Harrison on the outside. And I know that that's not what she wants. So she needs to really start to push to try to finish these fights. Easier said than done, but she's going to have to take some chances if she wants UFC gold to be on the line. And the last one to speak of on this card was Sidakov submitted Terrence McKinney. This one was unfortunate. Terrence McKinney is a super talented fighter. He has all the tools to be successful, and he's coming off of two quick losses. And obviously he's been on Twitter defending himself, which I think is unnecessary. You don't have to do that. You can speak to these other fighters and see how that messes with your mental. I think that, there's some areas that he could improve in, and I'm sure he knows that. But I think that doesn't take away from his potential. He has the potential to be championship level, but there's some work to shore up some of those holes where it's allowing him to get in these positions. In that submission, I think what really hindered him was the fact that his arm was just caught behind him. It was unlucky, but he didn't have an arm to fight the choke. If you can only fight the choke with one hand, I mean, you're not going to be able to do that. And so, unfortunate for him. I think that he gets on track with whoever they match him up with next. He'll need to get on track with whomever they match him up with next. But I think that everybody sees the tools that he has in his tool bag, and his ability to finish fights. I mean, he finished his debut in 7 seconds. So Terrence is still got the potential to be great. He just has to put it together, and I think that he will. So, moving on to current events. John Jones won the the 2023 SB for Fighter of the Year. I'm not sure who votes on these. I don't know if they are really putting in the research to look at who could possibly be the Fighter of the Year, but I don't think that John should have won in this particular instance because he only fought one time, and the one time that he fought, yes, it was a clear cut. You know, he watched Cyril Gain. That was straightforward. He did that, but I need to see a fighter fight more than once in the year to say, okay, you're Fighter of the Year. That's just not enough. I need to see 2-3 times where you're really exhibiting the fact that you are dominant and no fighter on the roster is better than you this year. And I just didn't get that from John in this year. Not to say that he's not, the greatest of all time or not, one of the best fighters on the planet. It's to say that this year, did he exhibit it? I don't think that he did this year. So I think that there were many other choices on that list that they could have gone with instead of him, but maybe it's the name, and what he's done previously that got him that award, but I don't think that he was deserving of it this particular time. The news that's really shaken up the light heavyweight division, John Jones's old division, is that Jamal Hill unfortunately suffered a ruptured Achilles and chose or was forced, I'm not sure which one it was, but vacated the light heavyweight belt, the second vacated belt that we've had in the past couple of years, with Yuri Prochazka having to vacate the belt due to his shoulder injury. Super unfortunate. I watched his, I think it came out in the middle of the night. I watched his video and was definitely something. I mean, obviously he was emotional, and just seeing that emotion, you know how much it meant to him to go from contender series to light heavyweight champion. And he was taking his victory lap. You could see him at all the events. And he was setting up for a potential big fight against Yuri. But I mean, just coming off an Achilles injury, like that's one of the worst injuries in sports. I really feel for him, but I think that he'll be back. I think that he's going to walk right into a title shot. But I think the best thing is for him to make sure that he's attacking that rehab and that he doesn't come back too soon. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't come back too soon because you'll do yourself a disservice. So take your time, attack the rehab, do everything that you need to do, and come back when you are really, really ready to go. And I think that everything will be fine for him. As far as the light heavyweight division itself, it's a mess. We got Alex Pereira coming up to fight Jan Blachowicz at the Salt Lake City card. And there was a lot of people chirping that should be made a title fight. And that just doesn't make sense in the sense of what do you do with the other people in the top 5? How does Alex just come up and earn a title shot? And then also, taking just them as individual fighters, taking them from 3 rounds to 5 rounds, something that they haven't prepared for up to this point. That's a lot. It just doesn't make sense all around. I personally would be good if the winner of this had a say in, the belt, this being something that's influential in who is in the title picture or even in the title fight. But just making this a title fight on a whim, I don't think that that's a good idea. And really kind of devalues the light heavyweight belt if you do that. Because, what if that were the case, what did Alex do in this division to deserve it? Lose to Israel Adesanya in the other division? Is that what you need to do to deserve a light heavyweight title shot? That doesn't make sense. So I think that them making this, having this fight play a part in what happens next, that's okay. But making this a title fight just would that works for nobody, except for whoever wins the fight. Then that works for them, sure, but nobody else. The last big story, which I think is foolish, is Ronda Rousey rumored to return to the UFC. This is silly. First of all, Ronda Rousey doesn't need to return to the UFC. She made her money in the UFC, then she left and went to the WWE, was very successful there. She's done movies. She has no reason to return to the UFC, other than if her, I guess her competitive nature is urging her back to the octagon. But other than that, there's no reason for her to return. And I'm sure the UFC may ask, maybe at UFC 300, her pulling a Brock Lesnar and moonlighting in the UFC for one fight. I could see that, but for what? Why? Just to, because the return just does not, the return on investment for her is just not big enough. Because what if she loses? If she loses, then we just tack that on to the Holly Holm Amanda Nunes fight, and her legacy is damaged. But I mean, if she wins, then what is she going to defend the belt? Nah, she's not going to defend the belt. She'll get it, drop it, and then we're back where we were. So really, who really wins in this? Nobody. So I don't think that Ronda Rousey is going to return. I don't think that it helps the sport if she returns. It'll help for a night, but I don't think that she's going to come back for an extended title run. I just don't see it. So, moving on, UFC London. We'll talk about a few fights on the card and then end it with Tom Aspinall's return. So, inexplicably, we got Caitlin Vieira against Pannie Kianzad on the prelims of a fight night card. That's number 4 against number 6 on the prelims. We're doing it again, huh? Now, I understand this is in London and you need to get, these London fighters out there for the regional effect. But I think that Caitlin Vieira has done enough to at least get on the main card, even if it's at the bottom of the main card. I think that she, and then not only this is a fight within the top of the division, that warrants a placement on the main card, in my opinion. We're seeing too many instances this year of ranked fighters being on the prelims of cards, and to me that kind of spits in the face of being ranked. So I think that is something that the UFC should definitely take stock of and should definitely address going forward. As for the fight itself, I kind of favor Caitlin a little bit on this one, but I think it's kind of an even fight. If it's on the feet, it's really anyone's fight. It's kind of a toss up. But I do favor Caitlin ever so slightly. The next fight, Paul Craig making his debut against Andre Muniz, which, I mean, I think we all know how this is going to go. This is going to go either a striking fight because both are grapplers and both want to be respective of that, or it hits the ground and we basically get a UFC invitational fight. So I'm going to say, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this today, I think it's going to be a striking fight. I think so. And Andre Muniz has some considerable power. I feel like I've kind of been a Muniz homer a little bit because I've backed him in the past few fights and it hasn't always worked out. But I think I'm going to back him again. I think that he's a little bit more multi-dimensional than Paul Craig on the feet. And I think that somehow or another he's going to slip one through. Paul Craig does get hit. And I think that Muniz slips one through and catches him, knocks him out. So Nathaniel Wood against Andre Fili. This at featherweight is a very interesting matchup. I think that this one might be fight of the night. Andre Fili is never in a boring fight. Super exciting fighter, and he's fighting Nathaniel Wood at home. Home game for him. Another featherweight fight for him. This is the second one in the division, and this is a great test for him to see if he can fight those fighters who have the longer reach, who are the natural bigger man, and overcome those particular odds. I favor Nathaniel Wood just because of his crisp striking, and just being a well-rounded fighter. I think that he will pose some problems and he'll be able to get inside that reach. Andre Fili can knock him out because he is tricky. But I think that Nathaniel Wood has the right game plan. And I think that he'll be able to get to Andre on this one. I think it goes all 3 rounds though. For the co-main event, and I don't know why this is I know why this is the co-main event, but I don't understand the pressing need to push this up there. Molly McCann against Stolyarenko. I would, if I were a matchmaker, I would have made this the opening fight on the card. I would have made it on the main card, but I would have made it the opening fight on the main card maybe. It's just, it doesn't, for the international audience, it doesn't have the pop and glamour that it does for the regional audience. And also, Molly McCann is boosted when Patty is there. And I assume Patty's going to be in attendance because that's his homie. But when it comes to the fights themselves, when he's not on the card, she doesn't have the same, Mario star that she has when he's on the card. You know what I'm saying? So I think that in this fight, it's going to go all 3 rounds. I think that Molly's a better fighter. Just she is, and she's been in there with some tough girls, and I think that she's going to eke out a decision on this one. But I don't think it's going to be anywhere as entertaining as her previous London card fights. And so, the main event of the evening: Tom Aspinall against Marcin Tybura. Tom's been gone with that unfortunate ACL injury that he suffered before when he was fighting Curtis Blades. And he called out. He called for Tybura, called for that fight. And I think that this is a good fight to get him back on track, to get his name back in the forefront of people's minds, and to help sort out this light heavyweight or this heavyweight division. What I foresee happening is Tom Aspinall comes in, does what he does, and gets comfortable, and finds a way to TKO Tybura, and then he calls out somebody like somebody in the top 5. I would imagine, because this fight itself is a tune-up fight, and this is the kind of fight that I feel like people should be taking when they come off of injury. And granted, there's no easy fights in the UFC, but there are fights that are easier. And so if he were to jump back into the top 5, I think that would have been a mistake. But jumping and fighting somebody that's at 10 is a great test to see if he's back where he was before he left. And so if he wins this fight and calls out Sergey Pavlovich or Cyril Gane, that would be perfect. Because he's going to need, in my opinion, one more fight before he goes and fights for the belt. In the interim, you know that John Jones is fighting Stipe Miocic. And so if John wins that fight, I think he rides off into the sunset. I don't think he's going to stick around to fight the rest of these guys. Not to mention, for John, that there's the small, slight chance that he's going to fight Tyson Fury in the future, which, I think that's bizarre, but it's out there. But I think that John rides off into the sunset. If Stipe wins, I also think he rides off into the sunset. He's 40 plus. You're not going to keep doing this and doing the firefighter thing. He's got a small child that just came, and I just don't think that he has the appetite to defend the belt that way. And so it's going to leave a open spot. Sergey is going to definitely be in the conversation. If Tom wins this fight, calls for Sergey, we got a ready-made title match right there. So that's what I'm looking to happen at UFC London. Tom to put his stamp on the division and walk right back into title contention. So that is what I see happening. If you have a differing opinion, definitely let me know. Like I said at the beginning, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube comments, everywhere. Let me know what you think. And we'll be on when the fights are going on. So definitely holler at us. Until next time, until episode 13, we will holler at you.